Story was a giant paradox. He taught anyone who would listen that regular habits were crucial for writing. He would hand out laminated bookmarks with Pliny's Nulla Die Sine Linea, never a day without a line on them. I mentioned some of you have one of those, have gotten one of those. Writers, he would tell us, are not necessarily the smartest or best read or most imaginative people, but they could get their butts in the chair day after day. For a while, he kept meticulous word counts to show us how regular daily productivity multiplied to articles and books. He loved to demystify the process. Do you want to know the secret of being published, he'd ask? And we'd lean in to hear his answer. The U.S. mail. If you don't send it out, it won't get accepted. If it comes back rejected, stick it in another envelope and send it to someone else. The U.S. mail, a great institution. He liked to think of himself as a laborer, and he was. He felt he had more in common with plumbers and tree cutters and roofers than with academics, many of whom appeared to him as unproductive whiners. He had no patience with romantic notions of writer's block. Could you imagine he would ask us, a plumber with plumber's block, who would say in the morning, you know, I just don't feel in the mood for working with pipes. That feeling just isn't there. No writing was work like other work. And at the same time, there was some magic, something almost unexplainable about what happened when your butt was in the chair. He was in love all of his life with the generative possibilities of language, the way it would lead to something new and unexpected, the way it would outrun intention and plan. He loved list making and the possibilities of that from his morning lists and day books. And as much as he would define and redefine the process and catalog the habits of writers, I'm convinced that it was this surprise, this unexpectedness, this mystery that kept him at it. How do you describe something so elusive? We need to start by looking at Don's description of the evolving text that the writer is composing. This text, these words, were not simply the products of labor. They constituted for Don a living, speaking partner in the process. He would write about the informing line and advise us that we listen to the text. One of my favorite descriptions is this, and it's fairly long, but I think it's worth reading. So he personifies head, mouth, page. So head makes a guess, and page tries to understand. Page tells head what is confusing, and head tries to understand. Head tries again, and page says, better, but page waits. And head becomes angry at this aggressive patience. Head gives up and turns the job over to mouth. Mouth dumbly speaks, and hand writes it down while ear listens. Ear tells head there is something there, a word perhaps unexpectedly dumbly speaks, or a bit of music, or an unusual angle of vision. Not much, but something. And page nods. Head shakes head back and forth with puzzlement. Yeah, something has happened. That dumb mouth has unknowingly said something, and now it has to be made clear and tested. Head goes to work, and page purrs. To write, then, is to be deeply responsive to the text you're producing, even to the point of allowing a word choice to redirect the writing. The great nonfiction writer John McPhee had a sign on his wall above his computer, and this I think has a lot to do with what Nancy was saying about the early part of the process. Have the courage to digress. Joseph Brodsky described Dostoevsky's digressive process this way. For a man beset with deadlines, and Dostoevsky had all kinds of gambling debts to pay off, and people ready to break his arm if he didn't pay them off, he was extraordinarily digressive, and these digressions, I venture to say, were prompted more by the language than the requirements of plot. Reading him makes one realize that stream of consciousness springs from not from consciousness, but from a word which alters or redirects one's consciousness. I'm going to read that last sentence again because I think it's significant. Reading Dostoevsky makes us realize that stream of consciousness springs not from consciousness, but from a word which alters or redirects one's consciousness. My own favorite example of this open stance to language is the 18th century novel Tristram Shandy, which opens with the moment of Tristram's conception. He blames his future psychological problems on the fact that the hall clock struck at the precise moment of insemination. The narrator then takes almost 200 pages to get to his birth. He's constantly sidetracked. For example, he begins to talk about a dispute between his mother and father, only to interrupt himself. My mother, you must know, But I have 50 more necessary things to let you know first. I have 100 difficulties which I have promised to clear up, and 1,000 distresses and domestic adventures crowding in on me, thick and threefold, upon the neck of one another. Each event evokes other events to make any linear narrative impossible. Tristram Shandy is a novel about the impossibility of writing a novel defeated by the aggressive invocations of language. So I would place this generative theory of language at the very heart of the writing process movement. It is the core of Peter Elbow's brilliant career-long advocacy of free writing, of James Britton's conception of expressive writing and shaping of the point of utterance, of Christensen's rhetoric of the sentence, of the amazing work done with journal writing, Linda Reef's quick writes that she's written about. The list is endless. Writing is not transcription. It is not the mere following of a plan. It is a dialogue between self and text in which language can redirect consciousness. Don usually wrote about this process in the metaphoric language that I've quoted here, but he did find Vygotsky's conception of inner language relevant. He was particularly interested in the way Vygotsky described the saturated quality of words in inner speech, the way they served as placeholders for a whole complex of associations. And I think in Nancy's list you see that happening. Don felt his list had that saturated quality, as if he were writing code words. Just as an example, think of the name of your hometown. For me, Ashland, Ohio. For many, you don't know where it is. Some of you know that it's an exit on Route 71. Yet for me, anybody know? Okay, good. Yet for me, it is saturated. Just that word, it's saturated, connected to memories, geographies, people, all evoked simply by the name. I think of my good friend Tom McNall. After the Great Flood of 1969, Ashland, Ohio, was declared by the governor a disaster area. Tom's comment, it's about time. It's all there. It's all connected in the word. So what happens when we write a word, or when I write a word like Ashland, Ohio? I may simply be writing to indicate a location, a contained denotative meaning. But yet I would argue that for the writer, the suggestiveness, the saturation of the word cannot be fully extinguished. It maintains some of these associations, emotions, reverberations, digressive possibilities. I can try to close them off and get on with my plan, or I can run with them, at least for a while, and see where they lead. We can see this process at work in some student first drafts, where the writer finds the true topic of the paper in the act of writing. In Catcher in the Rye, Holden describes an oral interpretation class in which the students are coached to yell digression whenever a speaker went off the topic.